I know it may sound a bit controversial for somebody who spends all of his time confronting and opposing Trump to say that Trump is a symptom as much as the cause, and that the actual cause is something much deeper. But I think we have to understand the gravity of this moment. We have to beat him at the polls, but we also have to confront what we all feel in our lives, that there's a coldness about our economy and our culture today. The fact that my kids' hockey league is owned by a for-profit company that bans parents from live streaming the games for the kids' grandparents because they've commoditized the streaming service. They literally buy our kids' sports and sell it back to us. The fact that work doesn't feel like it has dignity any longer because we are just pawns in a game to make massive amounts of profit for people that will never meet. Technology that is designed to isolate ourselves and to withdraw our kids from socialization. All of it feels broken. And when you feel less meaning and purpose and connection in your life, you seek out these demagogues. So, yes, I'm saying that we have to do both, beat him and fix the culture. And what I argue in Crisis of the Common Good is that it's a crisis, but the things necessary to regulate technology and build a common good capitalism, those are actually things that right and left have a lot more agreement on. Yeah, they might disagree on climate and abortion and immigration, but there's some commonality between right and left on this crisis. Yeah, obviously, I wrote this book because I want to be influential in rising this challenge to fix our culture. And, it's interesting. I've gotten, a couple texts just in the last 24 hours from some of my friends and colleagues who I know are running for president in 2028 who say, listen, I think you really hit on something. And I text back, well, let's talk about this. Let's do something together. And if we can build this conversation in the left about the spiritual disintegration of the country and what we have to do to build a common good, to bring Trump's base into this conversation, to maybe create a bigger coalition, well, that would be that'd be a great success in and of itself.
You're describing a role as in the conversation. Are you ruling out running yourself?
Oh, I don't know what I'll do in the future. I guess I do want this to be at the center of the conversation. I do want us to rise to this moment. And I also think that it's kind of inappropriate for anybody to be working on their own political agenda right now. As I said, I've spent all the last couple of years putting my money not into an account that I can use to run for future political office. I've been literally putting it all out onto the streets of this country to support citizen-led groups, because I just think that should be what we work on right now, is saving our democracy and supporting citizens, and not worry right now about what comes next for each of us personally.
Is the decision to put the money into citizens taking direct action a rejection of the Democratic Party structure?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I mean, I wish more of my colleagues did what I'm doing. I mean, I don't think all of us need $10 million, $20 million in the bank when our democracy is literally at risk. And there are a lot of citizen groups that badly need money. When these No Kings events started popping up, I found out that there were a lot of really small groups of citizens that couldn't even find enough money to, rent a stage or a speaker system or get liability insurance for a protest. And so, I just wrote a big check to those little No Kings groups, those little indivisible groups all across the country. And yeah, I think we should be doing more of that, and maybe putting less of our money into official party structures, at least right now, when the democracy seems at risk, and it's citizens, not politicians, who have the most legitimacy in fighting back.
I am very familiar with the voices that were available in the hours after Donald Trump won a second time. And yours is one of the few. You were one of the few people who was still speaking out about the dangers his second term represented. You were one of the few people communicating directly to voters. You were using your social media, sort of direct-to-camera videos like the one we played in our intro. And I went back and watched some of them, and every single thing you warned about, the corruption, I think some of the early ones after the inauguration were about Doge, around the oligarchs around him, around every single thing has come to pass. As someone who predicted a lot of what he would do and has already done it in year one, what are your warnings about what else he'll do in the next 3 years?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of those warnings that I was issuing in those early days, some of my colleagues said, hey, tone it down. Like, you're going to scare people. I mean, you're saying that he's trying to rig the election. People will give up if they think that there's maybe not going to be a free and fair election. My contention was, no, it's exactly the opposite. People in this country aren't ready to give up on democracy. They think it's broken and corrupted, but they're not ready to give up. And so if we tell them that it's at risk, people will actually show up. And that's exactly what has happened over the last year and a half. I just think we have to level with people about what the stakes are. I mean, make no mistake, he's building that ballroom because he doesn't think he's going anywhere. Even if he may not run for another term, he thinks his family is going to still be in charge. He thinks he's building a monarchical structure in which he and his family and his cronies never leave the White House. And so, yes, if we don't stand up for our democracy, if we don't win this November, he is going to feel empowered, emboldened. There are going to be more people who are scared of him, more institutions in this country who will fold. And it might be the end of our democracy. But that's not where we're heading right now, Nicole. We're heading on a path to actually have a free and fair election. We have defended most of his attempts to try to rig the rules. More citizens are involved than ever before. They're making horrible mistakes. And so as alarmist as I have been, I am optimistic. I'm also optimistic about the stuff I talk about in this book. How do we rebuild the common good? You know what? Church membership is up. There are more independent bookstores being launched. Some kids are throwing out their smartphones and starting to use these dumb phones, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the
Star
common
Trek.
good is something.
It makes you feel 100 years old when they ask you what a StarTech is. You're like, what?
I know. But so the book is about policy that we need to rebuild a sense of common good, a more communitarian nation. But I also see the same citizens that stood up for our politics and our democracy in Minneapolis starting to say, you know what? I want to shop at a local retailer. I don't want to spend all of my time online. And so the book in the end is a book that gives a positive prescription about how we can beat this guy and build a community in which we care more about each other.